Obviously, there's a lot of people taking a view on this environmentally and from a sustainability perspective, saying that it's possibly a foe, but to an organization, it should be your friend. It's giving you an opportunity to grow like you never have before, but it's also something you should fear because it's going to force you to grow at rates and to sizes that you won't be able to control and have the constraint and the organizational structures that you've once had before. In 1820, the top two economies in the world were China and India. Nearly 200 years later, guess who the top two economies are going to be? Approaching China and India again. You need to make a growth shift. The growth that you're living at is nothing compared to what's going on in the world. There's really two sides to this issue. One is obstacles that are in your path. As long as you have obstacles, they slow you down. So you have to get the obstacles out of the way. Okay, the second side of this is understanding literally, once they're gone, how do I go faster? So the better I know a road, the faster I can drive my car down it. The better I know where I'm going to go for my morning run, okay, it helps me go faster in my run. It takes the confusion, it takes the distraction, it takes the limitations away from it, knowledge. So one way is get rid of obstacles. Number two is have a better awareness of where you're going. And number three is you really have to strip out a lot of your limiting factors. A lot of our speed is limited by things that we have been told or taught or brought into our life before. Depends on what we're running. If we're running a marathon, it's going to be pretty hard to do it at a sprint pace. But if you do run a marathon, there's times you'll pick up your pace and there's times your pace will let off a little bit. So if I'm looking at running for 100 years at the speed of business today, it may be a little difficult. There's times that our engines need changed and repairing. It depends on the fuel that you're putting in. It depends on the structure, the strength of what you're dealing with. Can it go on for a long time? Maybe not. But I wouldn't risk, though, thinking I'm running a marathon when I'm just running a quarter of a mile. Very difficult. It's going to be a very, very, very hard struggle because your history of a business has been built on a certain kind of model. It's going to require you to look at manpower planning differently. That's going to be where you begin. You got to look at your workforce planning and you got to look at what's going on in the market. So if your particular market, okay, and you're an emerging market, you're averaging 12-month turnovers, I would be thinking 12-month employment assignments. So I'm hiring you, I'm the CEO, I'm hiring you, I'm looking at you for 12 months. As I get into this, if I think I can keep you, I'm thinking additional 12 months on the end of that. So what you're going to have to do is redefine workforce expectations, pay models, and get definitions of time put into it. There is not a global leadership style. I will tell you that the popular books in the bookstore want to say yes. The halls of academia say yes, but reality says no. Show me the leader. Who are the global leaders of today? And show me the consistency of their style of how they're working in the emerging markets and working in the developed markets simultaneously. The question is how can somebody who 2 generations ago, even really a generation ago, 20 years ago, that was living in a tent, living a very simple life, be leading a global empire today? How have they grown these businesses? What happened in Arabia to where these people could move from a very solitude, simple life to becoming a dynamic leader? You know, to get the answer to that, you really need to probe into their society. You need to look at what goes on. And one of the things you'll find is they spend considerable time in the desert. Arabian, specifically in the GCC, you'll find that the great leaders go to the desert frequently. And inside there, you kind of need to start looking at it and thinking what goes on. These aren't people who are going to ride their motorcycles and quad bikes and go play. Inside the desert, they're able to do several things. One is there's not a whole lot to do in the desert. So really it forces you to reflect. You begin to think about what's going on. You spend some time in reflection and figuring out. Another thing is you clear out. You get the clutter out of your head. As you get the clutter out of your head, what you're able to do then is have a clearer and crisper thinking approach. Another one is quite frankly, you have to learn how to read your environment. If you're not careful in the desert in reading your environment, you will very quickly get destroyed by nature. It'll take you over. The desert will literally devour you if you're not careful in reading that. And what's really struck me as interesting is quite frankly, I think their wisdom is built there. As I've watched this process and watched these Arabian leaders, I've realized their wisdom is cultivated by the desert. And the reason for that is in Western society, we have typically equated wisdom with age. When we think about older people that have wisdom and younger people say, oh, you're not wise yet. You know, when you get older, you'll get your wisdom kind of stings. And as you watch that, wisdom isn't reserved for age. Why is it that older people in the West supposedly have more wisdom? Where does wisdom come from? It comes from experience and reflection. So what happens is if I live an extremely active young life, I don't have any place to reflect. If I'm not reflecting, where's my wisdom come from? But when I get older, I typically have more time. I either have had more years to reflect, and I also happen to be in my older life, I usually have more segments of time to reflect. So as I'm able to reflect over a lifetime of experience, my wisdom is created. So if we look at some of the investments that have been made in the GCC are absolutely amazing. Some of the elements that have taken place are absolutely amazing. So where did the wisdom come from to make these decisions? It came from the desert where they're able to go out and reflect on their daily activities.